Wil jij ook werken aan echt succesvolle apps en nog heel veel andere ontwikkelingen die vandaag en morgen het verschil maken?
Do you want to challenge and be challenged?
We zoeken altijd nieuwe developers.
So, will you join us?
Check onze site.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us on the third and final day of UTech Masterclasses Live. And also, of course, a big thank you to our sponsors, ABN AMRO and Microsoft. Without them, this wouldn't be possible. Today, I'm not the only one who's hosting today. We've also got Marcel.
Good afternoon.
Later on, we'll start with a session of Kenzie Whalen about Uno, one platform to rule them all. After the break, we'll continue with the session from Abel Wang and April Edwards about GitHub Action. And to finish it all off, we'll go out with a bang, and that's the .NET pub quiz. Of course, all of you will join and we'll see who's the best .NETer of you all. Well, I think it's time for Kenzie to show what she knows about Uno. Kenzie, can you please start it off?
Get my screen shared and get going. All right, welcome everybody. My name is Kenzie Whalen. A little bit about me really quick. I am a developer based in the Boston area of the States, and also a Microsoft MVP. Today we're going to be talking about the Uno platform, this kind of a broad overview. So really quick about Uno, they are an open source platform created about 4 years ago as an internal project for a company called Inventive up in Montreal. A couple of years ago, they realized that it was something they really wanted to share with the community, and so they open sourced it and started creating products around it. So today we're going to be talking about what Uno is, why you'd want to use Uno, how Uno works, and then we'll dive into a quick demo. Okay, so Uno is a shared set of UI and logic that is deployed to UWP, which is of course, Windows desktop, Xbox One, HoloLens, Android, which is your Android phones, tablets, etc., iOS, which is your iPhone, Mac OS, which is pretty new, which is of course on your Mac, and then WebAssembly, which is all major browsers. So that's quite a lot of platforms, but that's kind of neat. But why would you want to use Uno? So if you're developing a UWP app natively, you would have to use a .NET language, so C#, F#, VB. If you were developing for the web natively, you'd be using JavaScript and HTML, CSS. Of course, there's many other web frameworks now as well. If you're developing for Android natively, Java or Kotlin, and iOS. Oh, it's probably in the way. And then for iOS, Objective-C or Swift. Of course, there are some other cross-platform tools that can help you mix and match some of these, but none that really cover all of them, and none that are in C# and XAML. So with Uno, all you need to know is C# and XAML, and if you really hate XAML for some reason, all you need is C#. That really decreases the development time, it decreases the team size, it decreases the skills you need to know, the tools you need to know. It makes everything faster and more efficient. So that's like a lot going on. So let's dive into a little bit of how Uno works. So we start with our 5 platform heads we talked about earlier, UWP, WebAssembly, iOS, Android, and Mac OS. And then you add your application code, which is of course your XAML and C#. And then Uno will apply the UI. So we'll talk about UWP at the end because it's a lot. It's a lot that's going on. So Uno will apply HTML and CSS to your WebAssembly, UIKit to iOS, Android UI to Android, and AppKit to Mac OS. So this means that you can use native UI and native controls for all of these different platforms, or you can choose to use the WinUI to have a consistent look and feel. You can also mix and match. So if you wanted, for some reason, to have a native iOS button and then a WinUI text field, you can do that. So that makes it really flexible and allows a lot of control for developers and designers. Underneath iOS and Android, Uno then applies Xamarin. If you're familiar with Xamarin, this is not Xamarin Forms. This is just Xamarin Native. So this is, of course, maintained by Microsoft. So it's another open source platform, and it's really powerful. So it's great to see a tool using all these other Microsoft technologies. Underneath that, it uses the Mono runtime. The Mono runtime is currently the best and only mobile-friendly implementation of .NET that targets iOS, Android, and WebAssembly. Yeah, and then for UWP, the only thing is UWP. That's it. Uno's kind of tagline is WinUI everywhere. So they're taking the UWP API and applying it to all these other platforms. So they're not really changing much on the UWP side, just implementing the API. So as you can see, Uno, as core is really just a set of layouts and controls using other technologies, which is incredible. It's a bridge between all these other platforms. So let's dive in just a little bit deeper into each of these different platform heads. So Android and iOS, you start with your C# and XAML, and then Uno will apply all of the Xamarin libraries and tools that you would use in Xamarin Native as well, and then applies the Mono runtime and gives you your finished app. For UWP, very little going on. You start with your C# and XAML, Uno applies the WinUI, and then you have your finished app. For WebAssembly, Uno gets a little interesting. So you, again, start with your C# and XAML. I'm starting to see a trend here. And then Uno applies the .NET Standard Library, which, of course, is an evolution of portable class libraries and a uniform collection of all the .NET platform APIs. They also apply their in-house created WebAssembly bootstrapper. So this bootstrapper takes any API from the .NET Standard Library and executes these files in the JavaScript console. This is what allows you to run your C# and XAML in a browser, so that it instead of just JavaScript. And then once again, apply some Mono runtime, and you have your finished app. So we've talked a lot about what Uno is. Let's dive into some code, because that's what we're really here for. All right, I'm just going to start with a brand new project. So I'm opening up Visual Studio in 2019. You can use 2017 as well. You can also use IDEs like Rider, Visual Studio for Mac, and Visual Studio Code if you prefer just WebAssembly. All right, so let's go ahead and create a new project. It's in my recent project templates, but we're just going to search for Uno up here. So to get this template, all you have to do is download a Visual Studio extension. That can be found on their website. You can just Google it. It's all super simple. All right, next. All right, we're just going to call this app feature tag. I also want to point out all these tags at the top: Android, C#, iOS, macOS, mobile, etc. Those are all truly in the project. It's pretty, I just think it's so nice, it's incredible. All right, go ahead and create. So Visual Studio right now is scaffolding our project heads for us using the template and applying all the NuGet packages and getting everything set up. So it might take a second, a lot going on. Awesome. All right, so I'm going to close these files down the right-hand side. It's a little overwhelming, but these are all of our project heads. Android, iOS, macOS, our shared project, which is where all the magic happens, UWP, and WebAssembly. So we're going to take a look into our shared project. We have our app.xaml and our app.xaml code behind. This is kind of where Uno happens. This is pretty neat. So if you want to take a look there, you definitely can. All right, we're going to hop into our main page.xaml. So you see we have a little bit of warning here. That's because we are set to Android, which of course Visual Studio is not recognizing. So all you have to do is select this drop down, select UWP, and now we have IntelliSense enabled, which is very useful for everybody. Great, so I'm just gonna go ahead and run this Hello World application so you can see what it looks like without changing anything. We're gonna switch our startup project to UWP and run. You can see that it's building down here, just taking a second. All right, there we go, nice little splash screen. And our Hello World, perfect, no changes. Okay, so let's go back in and add a couple of things. So what we're gonna do is add a slider and then add a text block that displays the value of the slider as well. Great. So the first thing I'm going to do is add my slider control and give it a name of slider because that's feeling creative today. Awesome. Now we're going to add a new text block, give some text. And so here, instead of putting a static value like we have in our Hello World, we're going to bind the value of the slider to this text. So it'll display the number the slider's at. So the first thing you gotta do, right, binding, value. Awesome. All right, and now what we have to do is add the element name and slider. So what we're telling it here is we're gridding the value of the element name slider, which is this. Great. You can add font size, I don't know, 50. I want this to look big. Perfect. We'll save. All right, let's run UWP again. Cool. So that Hello World looks a little obtrusive, so I'm just going to get rid of that. All right. Oh, copy those down. Okay. So you can see that our number is adjusting to the slider, so that's great. The binding worked as expected. Awesome. But it's also pretty ugly, and in the real world, you're not usually using just the standard style, the default. So we're going to add some styles into this. The first thing you're going to do is go and right-click on your shared project. And we're going to add a new folder. We're only adding a single item into this folder, but for sake of practice, we will add a folder. All right, we're going to call this styles. Then right-click, add new item. To add styles, we're going to add a resource dictionary, which of course is pretty self-explanatory. Oops, I didn't name it. It's a dictionary of resources. I'm just going to rename that though to not dictionary one. And let's give it a much more creative name. Okay. Awesome. So this is our blank resource dictionary. There's nothing in it yet. We have to add a style. So new style, we're going to give it a name of slider style. That's what we're going to be styling right now. And then we need a target type. Our target is a slider control, so we just add slider. All right. Within this style control, we're going to add our setters. So a setter needs to be added for each individual property that you want to change. This particular property, we're going to change the background and set the value to, we're going to go with pink. I'm going to go with pink today. I'm feeling a pink day. All right, I'm going to add a second setter and add a property of foreground. So this will be the left-hand side of our slider. The background will be the right-hand side. The value for this, I don't know, let's go with one of these suggested. Go with aqua. Perfect. So now we have a style in our resource dictionary called slider style, targeting slider. Great. Back in our main page of XAML, in order to reference our resource dictionary to grab that style, we have to add to the page resources. So all you have to do, add page resources, and then add the resource dictionary here. And the IntelliSense is so helpful because it just makes development so much faster. The IntelliSense isn't there for other IDEs, which is just a Windows thing, but it is here for Visual Studio. Perfect. All right, now we need to set the actual style of our slider, not step frequency. That's not what we're doing. Style to a static resource of slider style. Awesome. All right, let's run on UWP again and see how much the colors make it pop. Awesome. Okay, so you can see we have our blue and our pink. All right, very clearly not a designer. Colors are not my forte, but it works and looks much nicer. Well, I guess that's up to you. Great, so now we have it running on UWP, but the whole point of Uno is you can run it on different platforms. So let's take a look at WebAssembly. So we're going to change our startup project to WebAssembly and click Run. This is going to open up a new Chrome tab. Thanks. All right, so this takes a little bit longer. UWP is the fastest because it's a native Windows application, and Visual Studio was created by Microsoft. So just letting it run. And we'll splash screen again. All right, and there is our slider with the color changes. It's working, awesome. All right. Last, why don't we try it on Android? So I'm going to, I have my Android phone plugged in. We're going to switch the startup project to Android. It's going to run locally. I'm just going to pull up Visor, which is just an app, one of my puppers, just an app that displays my screen. So it'll show up on my physical phone and display on Visor. All right, well, Android can take a minute. So while that's building, I just wanted to point out that we truly haven't even touched the platform-specific projects. If you take a look at Android, you have your native folder structure, your main activity. iOS is your input. It's like all these things that you would have if you created a Xamarin app as well. And this is also where you would add platform-specific code. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Yeah, and then we also have our NuGet packages that have all been, I can't go to it while it's building, but all our NuGet packages from Uno are there. Our WebAssembly Bootstrapper is in there, our UI is in there, and that's where you go to update or add some of the things if you wanted to use like the Windows Community Toolkit implementation for things like Data Grid. You can go there. They have a whole bunch of other APIs there. Let's do the check in on our Android app. And there it is on Android, WebAssembly UWP. There we go. Awesome. That's pretty cool. Great. Stop that. The other thing I wanted to talk about with Visual Studio is that since you're using Visual Studio, you have all these different tools for designing, which is kind of the purpose of XAML, right? So XAML was created to help bridge the gap between designers and front-end devs to make it more readable, easier. All of these components can be created in C#. in the code behind, but it's a lot harder for designers to read. So they also created tools like Blend, which you can use with Uno, the designer, all that kind of stuff, which it makes it really useful. I also want to point out that none of this code is Uno specific. This is all XAML and C#. These are all things you don't need to learn for Uno. They just take tools you already know and love and apply it to other things. So that's pretty cool. You can also run iOS on Visual Studio. However, I tried to run it before this talk, and I think there's a mismatch between my Xcode versions, but the simulator isn't popping up for me, which is part of live coding, but that is something that you usually are able to do. I would just need to work through it a little bit. All right, awesome. Let's hop back into our presentation. So I talked a lot about using shared code. We didn't write any platform-specific code at all, which is awesome. But there are 2 different ways to write platform-specific code if you wanted to. There are situations where you could want to change the background or add a warning on just a single platform. And you can use either build conditional statements or partial classes. Okay. So for your build conditional statements, it kind of just looks like a set of if statements, because that's pretty much what it is. So we're starting with our if UWP, set the platform text property to this is UWP, WebAssembly, etc. This is truly only just setting the text value of a single element. And this is a lot of lines. If you need to do platform-specific code for larger projects, it's going to look messy and get cumbersome, and it's rough. So the solution to that is by using partial classes. These are examples. So to create partial classes, you create a class with the same name in each of your platform-specific projects. So in this case, it's just the main page. And then we're adding the set background color method, which is going to be the same name in all projects. The difference is the value that we're setting. You'll also notice syntax changes for these projects. So iOS is using system pink color, Android is color.yellow, etc. That is kind of the downside of using platform specific. You do need to know some different syntax, but not that hard to work around. Then to call this method in your shared project, all you do is call the method, and Uno will map the value of the individual project to the device that you're using. So going back a little bit, we have iOS set to pink. So Uno, when this method is hit on a shared project, it'll recognize that you're on an iPhone, and it'll set the background color to pink. So that's pretty great. It's a lot more accessible, easy to read and use, works a lot better. Great. So I know that all of you probably don't ever have issues in your code, and you write one time and it deploys and there's no issues, but I tend to have bugs, so I have to use a debugger. Debugging in Uno looks a little bit different for each platform. For Android and iOS, you would use the Mono debugger in Visual Studio. For web, use the Chromium debugger. So that's only for Chromium-based browsers, which are Edge and Chrome. And then for UWP, you use the Visual Studio debugger, which is what you would be used to if you use Visual Studio. All right, for UI testing, because you should be testing your UI and making it part of the development process and not an afterthought, you can use App Center for iOS and Android, which is super dynamic and easy to use. Love it. And then for WebAssembly, you can use Selenium testing. All right, also, we touched on it, I think, in the beginning about how Uno 3.0 came out a few weeks ago. But I want to talk a little bit about those features. This talk is more about the general use of Uno. So this was all like Uno 1.0. This was all everything that Uno created in the very beginning. But Uno 3.0 added support for Linux, which is pretty cool. Skia, which of course is a 2D graphic library. Fluent UI, which is a collection of frameworks created by Microsoft for cross-platform development, and Material, which was created by Google and is a set of designs and controls that look so professional, so pretty. And so Uno implemented these so that your apps can look finished with very little effort and have professional designs. I don't know about you guys, but I am not a designer. That is hard work, and I don't have. I mean, clearly you saw the colors that I chose. Don't have the eye for it. So these tools make a big difference with development. Also, Uno is open source, so that makes I just love that it's open source. It means that you can see everything under the hood. You can go and check it out. You can understand it better. This is the link to their GitHub. If you want something added, you can submit a PR. If you see a bug, you can report it and follow the progress. You're always kind of in with the development team. It's not so separated. And I also just love the open source community in general. I think is important because it's making software part of the community, and we're building each other up. And Uno wouldn't be possible without other technology. So it's just standing on the shoulders of giants, and I'm excited to see more open source projects like this. So I know that you're so pumped to get out there and get started with Uno because this was such an exciting talk. So to get started, there's a couple of things you can do. They have a playground, so Uno playground, kind of like a JS Fiddle type thing, just something you can fiddle, no pun intended, can fiddle with in the browser to get an idea without having to pull up a full new Visual Studio instance or anything. And you can also head to their GitHub. You can check out their latest pull requests. You can check out any issues and maybe make some changes yourself. You can see all the updates, and you're right in the ground with the team. And of course, you can always also create a new Visual Studio project like we did today, and make it your own, maybe add some different colors. All right, awesome. So these are the resources. Excuse me. This is the platform.uno is their website, all their docs live, their demos, use cases, stuff like that. The playground I just talked about, and their GitHub link as well. Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming and for being flexible with the online format of the world right now. Thank you, Future Tech, for putting us on. This has been awesome. If you want to follow me on Twitter, at Kenzie Whalen, GitHub, it's MK Whalen. I know I'm not consistent. And my blog is kenziewhalen.com. Awesome. Thanks again, guys.
Cool. Thanks for this talk, Kenzie. There were a lot of questions. Well, we have time enough to handle them all. So I will relay them to you. The first question was, but it was before you answered it yourself. How does Uno relate to Xamarin? Xamarin is used on the background, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so all of their Android and iOS implementation is from Xamarin. So, Xamarin, of course, it does a whole lot of other stuff under the hood, and they're just taking that. So they just implemented UWP with that, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Okay, no, the other question was, how does Uno relate to Maui, which was also sold as the unifying framework for all the platforms? Yeah, so Uno is a little bit older than Maui. Maui is a Microsoft created product. Uno is a third-party product. So I think it'll be interesting to see. I think the more cross-platform tools there are in the space, the better it makes everybody. So yeah, Maui is a Microsoft created product, so it's separate that way. Yeah, it's challenging each other, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, yeah, competition's good, so it'll be fun to see. That's true. Another question was, do you have any metrics on the performance of the Uno where compared to native UIs or other cross-platform frameworks like React Native or Ionic or the likes? Yeah, so Uno is kind of dependent on the Mono runtimes for speed. So as fast as Mono can be, it's as fast as Uno can be. I don't have any specific numbers as far as how it relates to other cross-platform tools. It is slower than native, not significantly, but like anything, you have like pros and cons. Yeah. On the Maui thing, Vincent says Maui doesn't list web, right? And Uno does. Right. Yeah. So Uno deploys to WebAssembly, which is I think pretty significant. Yeah. Another question from the same Vincent. How does Uno support things like hot reloading? comparable to things like HTML, which allows a very fast front-end development loop.
Yeah, so Uno uses hot reload and hot restart for Xamarin. So iOS and Android have hot reload and hot restart. And then I don't believe there's a hot reload in WebAssembly, but I'm not 100% on that. But I can look it up and hop in Discord after this and answer that.
Question to the viewers: if you have a question, still a question, we have still some time left. So ask them in the Talk to Kenzie Whalen channel, then I can relay them. Another question is, are you able to do a responsive design using Uno?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's kind of what the idea was behind the material, adding some responsive UI integrations.
Okay, so what would be your opinion if I have to, if I want to make a cross-platform applications, which would you think I should use? Xamarin, Maui, or Uno?
Yeah, so I think it depends on what you're trying to create. So if you're only looking to create mobile apps, I'd probably say Xamarin, just because it's, why would you would need to create all these other projects if you're only creating mobile apps. Yeah. If you're not looking to create WebAssembly, I believe Maui uses Blazor, so it's just kind of like a different syntax and different development style as far as that goes. But otherwise, I mean, Uno runs on top of a bunch of Microsoft technology, so it's not wildly different when it comes to stuff like that. So I think it's more of a preference between development tools. They're both really powerful in performance.
So Uno is the one, if you want to check all the boxes and all the platforms, then that's the one. And if you want to use a subset, then the other two work fine too. Okay.
Yeah.
Well.
And then with Xamarin as well, if you're using Xamarin Forms for building Android and iOS, Xamarin Forms XAML is different from UWP XAML, which is what Uno uses. And the difference is really just syntax. I mean, it's all XAML. Xamarin Forms XAML is a little bit more precise, not precise, pushed down, I'm trying to think of a word, concise, and easier to kind of read. UWP XAML is more built out, so there's just more tools there. So that also comes down to preference.
Okay. Well, that were the questions for this moment, I think. Yep. Now, the rest of everybody has to use it or install it. What was the URL again?
I think you guys are.
Yeah.
I can't understand. Yeah. Oh, thank you.
His mic is on.
Yeah. What'd you say?
So that they go to, and it's uno.platform.io, right?
Platform.uno. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Awesome.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you too, Kenzie. Well, we ended up finishing 5 minutes earlier, but Kenzie will stay a little bit longer in the Discord channel. So if you got any additional questions that come up, please ask her. She'll answer them all for you. I guess we're going on a little break. We'll be back 10 minutes before 5, yes. So see you soon. Grab a drink and see you in a minute.